strength that they had, because usually when I go into workshops, there are sometimes leaders and people reporting into them within the same workshop. And often there seems to be a slight guard, right? I mean, people are not that open when it comes to being around the people they report into. But this is completely different. It was so human, so genuine, so warm. And Roydon came across as this leader who was very quiet, very observing, the kind of leader who would speak at the last, who would allow everybody else to contribute. And then suddenly Roydon picks this topic, which is politics and power and organization. And I was like, oh, wow, even often outspoken leaders shy away from talking about a topic like this. So I was really excited and still very excited to hear Roydon talk more about this. Just to give a background, Roydon is a senior leader. He's a vice president of talent management and development at Northern Trust. He's been with them for more than 10 years now. He's worked with various other organizations before this. And his initial interest in visual design actually led him to learn more about people. And he also is a learner, a continuous learner. He's right now pursuing his doctorate in the influence of AI in talent development and people management. So over to you, Roy. Very happy to have you here. Thank you so much for your time. Tell us about you, your leadership journey, and take us through it.
Thank you, Sushmita, and thanks for this opportunity. And thanks to everyone who have joined today to hear me talk about leadership. So my leadership journey started, I think, at least from the time I can recall. It started when I was doing my college, my graduation at Madras Christian College. So this was about 23 years ago. I was lucky enough to get into Madras Christian College because I didn't score that well in my 12th. And I scored somewhere around 76%. And I didn't dream of getting into any of the top tier colleges, right? But thankfully for me, it so happened that they had introduced a new course called visual communication, which not many people had heard about at that point in time. And there were not many applications. So the usual cutoffs, which happened with percentage, just didn't apply, and they actually went with interviews. So I got lucky and I got through this interview and I got a seat in the college. And I think that's where my journey with understanding the whole concept of leadership started, because all of a sudden I was surrounded by these people, intellectuals, some of the best in the country, and even students who were very interested in a lot of leadership topics. So I got exposed to leadership inadvertently. Like I wasn't looking for inspiration in leadership, or I wasn't even thinking of being a leader in the future or looking at the whole concept of leadership. But just by virtue of landing in an environment which promoted leadership kind of kickstarted my journey. And one of the first things that I remember, the first lessons that have kind of stuck with me, is when we were actually doing an interview with our college principal. And in MCC, we would have these gutters, right? So basically, rainwater drainage systems. It's a huge 365-acre campus, a lot of greenery. We had our own flora and fauna. There would be deer and rabbits all around the campus. And ours was one of those few campuses where you could walk in any time and you would find students sitting on the gutters and having a chat, even during college hours. So the interviewer asked our principal, like, how is it that in this day and age you have a campus where there doesn't seem to be much discipline around, and nobody seems to be attending class, everyone's in the gutters. And a principal very coolly replied saying, see, we believe in building leaders for the future. And when you're looking to build leaders for the future, the best way you can build accountability in them is by giving them freedom. And with freedom comes responsibility. So if I don't give my students the freedom to choose when to attend class and what class to attend, how can I teach them to be accountable leaders for the future? Right. And that is something that really stuck with me. And the reason I picked this topic, Sushmita, and it's a very interesting topic. And again, luckily for me, I was exposed to politics very early in my career, right? And there always seems to be a negative perception towards office politics, right? And that was a perception that even I used to hold, even sometime back, and that I kind of changed my perception over the few years. And the perception changed after I read this book called Animal Farm by George Orwell. Right, so this book was basically written way back in 1945, and it's basically a political satire. And it was written to take a dig at the increasing rise of communist regimes across the world. Right, but if you read the book, and there is actually a line in the book which says all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Correct, and it kind of, I don't want to spoil the whole reading experience for those of you who haven't read the book. But if you are interested in power and politics, even in the even in an organizational setup, I think that's a good book to read. And after I read that book, I realized that politics may not be such a bad thing, right? And it depends on how what you use your politics for. What is the purpose of the decisions that you make by being political, right? And another uh, realization that dawned upon me was during one of the conversations that I was having with one of my team members, and actually one of my colleagues. I don't know if she was there during the session that you mentioned, Sushmita, but we were talking, and she was like, we were talking about politics in the organization, and she was like, "Oh, but you're very political," and it took me by surprise. And I said, "I don't think I'm political," and I actually got into an argument saying that why do you say I'm political? I'm not political, because even in my mind at that point in time, I was thinking of the negative perception of politics, right? Because you usually say, okay, if there is politics in an organization, it's probably negative. But then I slowly started to realize that it depends on what you use it for and how you use it for and what is your intent behind it. So then I started reframing that construct. So that's one of the reasons I picked this topic, Sushmita, and I'll probably begin with the story of how I was exposed to one of my first lessons in office politics very early in my career. So I had finished my college when I was about 19 years old, and I joined an advertising firm. And my first manager was a person who had grown through the ranks. Yeah, he was basically an office boy and learned the skills of graphic design, and he got very creative, and he had grown to the ranks of an art director. And at that point in time, he was one of the best art directors in Chennai. So when I got an opportunity to work with him, I was very excited, right? Because uh, a young 19, 20-year-old getting to work with one of the top art directors, it was a big thing. And I looked at him as a hero, and I was like, yeah, this is the guy I need to learn the heart of creativity and advertising from. And initially things were like excellent, right? And he would push me to get the best out of me and stuff. And then a few months down the line, something happened. So there was a there was a client who came to us and wanted us to come up with a creative that was to be put up on Times magazine. So this was a, a Indian tech giant that wanted to launch their ERP software in the US. So it was a big deal for an Indian advertising firm to get space on Time magazine. That was a full page advertisement. And the concept that the creative director had come up with was for a face to be half frowning and half smiling, right? And at that point in time, it was very difficult to create something like that, because these days AI could do it for you in seconds, but back in the day, you had to manually shoot and edit and do a lot of things. But luckily, because I was exposed to some of these new age tools because I straight out of college. None of the experienced folks knew about this, but there was actually a software which allowed you to actually map nodes on a human face. And if the expression was neutral enough, you could either make that face smile or frown, right? So what would have cost us a few lakhs to shoot back then was achieved within a few days. And so my creative director decided to take me, give me a treat because I'd saved them a few lakhs and a lot of effort. So I got invited to Cannes Lions screening, and those days that was a big thing because each advertising agency was just given, I think, a few tickets based on the size. So she had three tickets, so she took me and another visualizer, and we had gone for the screening with her. And when we came back, I didn't realize. I thought, okay, I had done something great, and everyone would be very happy with, me going and watching the screening of the Cannes Lions, and we were back. Within a week, I came to know that this art director didn't want to work with me. Right. So it was a big shock for me because what I saw as, okay, my opportunity to learn, he saw me as a threat because he thought, hey, here's this guy who's come with a college degree. He knows the latest tools and he's probably going to get better than me or take my job one day. Right. So that was my first experience with office politics. Right. And yeah, uh, things got better from there because of course this was the first experience, and I later on had the opportunity to work with a lot of really good managers who have kind of shaped my point of view on leadership.
May I come in and ask a question there,
Yeah.
Roy?
Yeah.
So, how would you then say that this is something that doesn't have a negative side to it? Like, if somebody, for your hard work, you were recognized and
Hmm.
you got an opportunity, and
Hmm.
when you came back, you realized that somebody actually held that against you, somebody you
Hmm.
trusted, right? Because you were working with him. Uh,
Correct.
what is the positive side to this?
So yeah, we'll try and deconstruct this whole concept of leadership, politics, and power. Um, can I take some time to explain this, Sushmita? All right. So it's easier to answer it in one word, but I know a lot of people are spending time watching this, so I'd like to give you a little more nuanced answer. Okay, so I think for the purpose of this discussion, let's clearly define some of these terms, right? For example, leader and leadership are two different words, are two different constructs. Okay, so for the purpose of this discussion here today, let's define a leader as someone who has followers. Okay, and when I say followers, genuine followers, not paid followers on Instagram or team members who keep following you because they want that next promotion. Okay, so let's define leaders as somebody who have the influence to generate followers of a certain kind, right? Because of what they are and what they bring to the table. Now, let's look at leadership as not a term or a terminology, but as a construct or as a concept, because leadership includes behaviors, it includes traits, it includes attitudes, it includes certain things which are not easily understood, right? It's not like a fact, it's like a concept. So let's look at leadership as a construct which we can keep building on or iterating. Now, coming to power, before we get into power, I think we need to differentiate between uh, power and authority, okay? Because quite often in the workplace, we kind of mix the two. So when a company appoints somebody as a CEO or a CXO, what they're really doing is they're appointing a person and giving that person authority. They're not giving that person power. Okay. So there's a difference between the two. Power is something that is given to a leader by whom they interact with, right? So power is something that is exchanged with the leader, and the leader obviously uses the power, but the power is given by a follower, right? So it is in our hands to give that power to a leader who's in a position of authority. Okay. And the way I would define politics is using that power to influence a decision or a motive or something tangible or intangible for a given purpose. Okay. And now, if that purpose is good, and if that purpose is for the right reasons, then you're a good leader, right? Because you're using the power and the politics for a purpose that is righteous, right? Whereas the same leader using the same power given to him by the or him or her or them by their followers, using the same politics to achieve an outcome that is not right, right, or not morally correct, is is the negative aspect of politics, which we most often relate to. Does that answer your question, Sushmita? I know it's a long answer, but thought I'll use this opportunity to set the context.
Yeah. So what I'm understanding is what you're saying is politics, the word itself is not, I mean, we usually use it to represent something that's not happening right. That is,
Correct.
misusing the power is how we use it, but that's not entirely
Correct.
what it is. It also has the other
Correct.
side to it, where you're using your influence in order to get something done, which is for the larger righteous cause.
Correct. Because you can also use politics to help somebody in their career. You can use politics to, counter biases in the system, right?
So can you give an example to illustrate one of those, Roydon, if something comes to mind, which where politics is used in a way which is, helping the system or helping people?
Yeah. So I can give you an example from one of the previous companies I worked with, right? So we were a very large team, over 100 plus employees working in these teams. And of course, because given the size of the team, and it was a new business that had just come into India, and there was a lot of opportunity for progress and promotion. Okay, because it was a growing business, it had just migrated from the US. Talent in India was being trained, mentored. So you didn't have too many people along the whole workflow, right? So you would have somebody from a different industry who was leading the function, and then you would have resources pulled in from engineering colleges and arts colleges, science colleges, from various backgrounds, and trained on upskilling themselves for that particular workflow. Okay. And over a period of time, what I began to notice was that there were a certain set of individuals who were not getting their promotions, and we knew for a fact that they were very high performers. Okay, but they were not able to clear their promotions because of a test, right? And this test was being framed in such a way that there was a particular set of individuals who were not able to crack it, right? And of course, there was a certain objectivity to the grading of the test as well, which made it a little more complicated. And this was back in the day, so the whole idea of DNI and inclusiveness hadn't really trickled into the system. Okay, so those were just catchphrases that were used. There were no systems and processes in place at that point in time. But for some of us who were paying attention, we could recognize certain patterns in the bias that was being framed, right? But then how do you overcome this? Because it was a very legitimate process, right? Some people were clearing it and some were not, right? Like going back to the animal farm, right? All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than the others. But it's the way the whole assessment was kind of framed. And because of that, uh, you know people were at the wrong end of the whole promotion cycle. So I was able to politically maneuver that whole process to ensure that everyone got a fair chance. So I think it's how you use it and what are the outcomes, and those who benefited, yeah, for them it was a positive outcome of the politics that was there. Yeah.
So you're saying that you used politics in a way where you could pull out the bias from the system so that everybody had a fair chance to go through it. What did you
Correct.
do when you say you used politics? Like, how did you apply that there?
So, see, the first thing was in the process, right? So the process had to be tweaked. Now, if I had to go and say, hey, you're being biased, we need to, change the evaluator, or, give make easier question papers or whatever that is, it would not have served the purpose, right? So I had to maneuver the system in such a way that nobody felt that, their authority was being questioned, or their powers of running the whole promotion process was being challenged, right? So I got myself involved into the process. I suggested certain recommendations, right, using appreciative inquiry techniques, wherein I said, okay, here's what you're doing well, let's improve the process, right? And I used my relationship with some of those people who are running that process uh, to try and tweak the process to what I thought would allow the others to have a fair crack at the interviews, right? So I didn't go up to these people and say, hey, you've created this system which is very biased and it's eliminating a lot of good resources from being promoted. I went up to them and say, hey, let me help you, improve the process that you're running, right? Of course, it takes a lot of thought process, right? It also was easy for me because I had a relationship with those individuals, right? And because of that, I was able to, get the output that I wanted, right? But I never went back to any of them and said, hey, you know what? I use politics to get this done. But now when I reflect on it, that's what I did. Right, going back to this conversation which I had with one of my colleagues, right? Uh, I always thought that I'm not being political because I'm not doing anything wrong, because in my moral compass, I'm doing the right thing, right? So at that point in time, I didn't realize, okay, I'm doing politics here, right? At that point in time, my intent was to help someone, and I achieved that. But how did I achieve it? Now, when I reflect on it, now that I have a better understanding of what power is and what politics is, I'm able to articulate it this way. But in the earlier scheme of things, at that point in time, I would have articulated it a totally different way.
So what I'm hearing you say really is that you approached the situation without confronting or threatening somebody. You approached it in a way where they would open up to the what you're going to say and propose in order for the larger good to happen. And you did it because you had a genuine relationship with them. There was trust.
Yep.
So even if you were not completely out there saying that, hey, this is what I want to get done, you said it in a way where doors opened up because you did not confront them or threaten them.
No, not at all. Some of them are still very good friends of
Yeah,
mine.
absolutely. So
And
it's in
for all
the
you know,
hmm.
it's not, I don't think they did it with the intent of eliminating, a certain type
Yeah,
of people from being promoted. It,
implicit
it may have
bias.
been, yeah, it's something that they may not have even realized.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, so I'm thinking that, so now it's making me think about the word politics, right? I mean, like you said, I think perhaps it's in the way we all see the word politics and the manipulation that is in the politics, which is usually used to harm. But
Correct.
in a way, you're saying that you can, in a way, manipulate if it is for the larger good and nobody's getting harmed in the process.
Yeah. No harm, no foul.
Interesting. Great. Okay, I think I want to open up if there are questions for that the audience have, I want to open it up and then take it from there, if you're okay with that, Roy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. All right. Yes.
This is more to Sushmita and Roydon. Instead of, saying it as manipulation, if we change the concept to persuasion or influence, the entire perspective changes. Because I really believe that it's not, nobody is apolitical. Okay. And with power, with positions, with titles, this becomes a part. What are we influencing? And who is for whose interest? If
Correct.
that is addressed, so how do you make it clearer to the team also? Because whatever we do, it's also being observed by the team sometime.
Yeah.
So how do we, as based on your experience, you can share that on how do we also influence the team? Is nothing wrong to be political, and also needs time and investment to get or gain that trust to
Correct.
influence. So how do we bring that emphasis on it?
Yeah. So I would say trust is at the core of your team members believing what you tell them, right? So if you've not built that relationship that is grounded by trust, no matter how genuine you think you are, if the other person, doesn't buy that argument or doesn't trust you with what you're saying or doesn't trust your intent, then it's not going to work, right? But the larger question is, how do you build that trust with your team? Okay, and this is something that takes a lot of time. It's not going to happen overnight. It takes weeks, months, years together to build that trust. And it's building the trust is also relatively easier. Maintaining that trust over a longer period of time is even tougher, right? But what has worked well for me is to begin with is to create this psychological safe environment where everyone can come and talk their heart and mind out to you, right? I've always had instances where some of the folks who worked with me would come and tell me if they're looking out for roles externally, right? For that to happen, you need to give the other person the space and basically give them the opportunity to make mistakes, and at the same time, uh, you know, give them that feedback in such a way that they're not threatened, right? And it's a give and take relationship. So I think listening is very important. So you've got to listen to what the other person says. You've got to value their opinion, and you've got to do this repeatedly over a long period to build that trust. Okay. And the other aspect is about being humble, right? And being genuinely, uh, you know, compassionate towards their perspective. Okay. And it's not about like, for example, the other day we were in a discussion and somebody said we are actually teaching our managers to be more empathetic, right? And empathy is a skill that can be built, right? And I was sitting there wondering, like, you can certainly teach somebody to be empathetic, but when that behavior is being demonstrated, would it come out as something that's genuine or not, right? And when somebody is trying to pretend to be empathetic because they have learned that skill, would the other person at the receiving end not see through that? Right? So I think certain genuineness is also important, and and in all of this, I think when you're explaining the intent, I think you have to give them your perspective where you're coming from, so that they truly understand and appreciate that, right? And at times they may not agree with you. It's okay to disagree, but at the same time, there should be that understanding that even if we have a disagreement, this is where we draw the line. We're not going to, take this as a grudge, or there's not going to be any retaliation or anything of that sort.
Thank you.
Till another question comes from the audience. I wanted to ask you, Roy,
Mhm.
have there been situations within the organization where there was, like, you were able to see palpable amount of politics really playing out in a way which was not healthy,
Mhm.
and you wanted to address it,
Mhm.
not really necessarily calling out because you probably thought that it won't help, uh,
Mhm.
but using your power to influence in a very genuine way? Have you been able to really call out and change situations of heavy duty politics within an organization and change for the better?
Okay. So the most heavy duty politics that I witnessed is when the ship is sinking, right? And luckily, it was very early in my career, so I was just sitting on the sidelines and watching the fun. So I wasn't at the receiving end of that politics, but it gave me lifelong lessons, right? I really learned a lot from that. And that has actually saved me a lot of sleepless nights much later in my career. And it has also given me, and I'm sure my team, a good mental health balance because I learned from other people's mistakes. So I think the politics in that particular organization was primarily because it was a sinking ship, right? And nobody stood to gain anything by calming the waters, okay? Because it was a free for all. We knew that the organization would cease to exist because of course it was during the 2008 recession, and we were impacted pretty badly. And the politics started because it was a question of who outlasts the other person before we all find a job, right? And in that situation, in that environment, the best that you could do, and the best examples that I saw being demonstrated in terms of leadership was people trying to help each other, right? Because at that point in time, there's no point in trying to solve for the politics because each one is going to watch out for themselves. And the whole intent there, even with the leaders who had like very good intentions, was to try and minimize the damage, right? And try and help everybody find a job in another place, right? So I think it's important to kind of gauge the situation uh, when you see that things are becoming too political, or it's becoming a threatening environment. Then for your own psychological balance and your own mental well-being, I think at times it's good to withdraw in such situations. Withdrawing is not a bad ploy. Withdrawing and trying to get yourself out of that situation rather than you getting into the mix and making things worse for either other people or yourself. It's better to get yourself out of that threatening environment rather than trying to solve a problem. Yeah.
Thanks, Roy. But would it at all help to call it out?
I mean, see, when there is heightened politics happening, everybody knows it's happening, right? And everybody knows that they are using politics and power to further their own cause, right? So when things go out of control, you don't really need to call it out. Everybody knows what's happening, and everybody is just watching out for themselves, and they are probably doing the right thing from their perspective, right? So calling it out at that point in time, like if I reflect of what was happening at that point in time, I don't think it would have served any purpose because there was no business, right? So the purpose of any organization is to make money. It's to be in business. So in such heightened situations, I mean, probably not worth it.
Can I ask Sushmita?
Yes,
Hi.
please. Yes, Rajni.
Roydon, while I agree that like how as a leader can politically bring something good for the, I mean, the intention is good, you can do that, right?
Yep.
So if someone wants to navigate the politics, right, is it a skill that can be learned, or how professionals can start developing intentionally? So you, from your story, I found that like naturally inclined to that, but
Mhm.
is it something can be learned?
Yes, I think it can be learned, Rajini. I certainly think that politics can be learned, and how do you learn and apply it in the workplace? I think that is the challenge, right? Because I don't think there are too many books written about office politics, right? Or how do you navigate organizational politics, right? Because again, it's something that is very dynamic. It's very agile, right? It differs from one organization to the other, right? So I don't think there is a set principles where you can say, okay, here's how you resolve politics in a particular sector or a particular organization, because the variables are so different, right? So it's very difficult to come up with a solution or a formula. But I think what is possible is to understand how leaders have made decisions uh, in in these political situations. End of the day, it's all about decision making, and how do you maneuver the decision making? How do you influence that decision making? So if you can maybe read books about politics, geopolitical situations, how have leaders resolved those in the past? How have military leaders led campaigns in the past? How have political leaders established how have they come to power, and how have they established social systems? So I think these are certain ideas we can draw from other spaces, other areas of expertise, and that knowledge, that intrinsic knowledge that we get by reading of power and politics in other sectors, can then be brought into our real life situations. I think that's how I have managed to navigate power and politics.
Yeah, while saying that, but I found that you got the inspiration from animal form, right? It's something else, and then you try to see that like how it is thinking that, right?
Yeah. No, I didn't get inspired by Animal Farm. Like, I realized that I've been, practicing politics way before Animal Farm, and but the only thing was I didn't realize that it was politics, because at that point in time I was thinking, okay, this is something that I'm doing because this is the right thing to do. Okay, and this is how you do it, and this is, you're standing up for yourself, or you're standing up for your colleagues, right? But how you navigate it is what defines the whole politics behind it.
Okay, okay. I have one follow-up question. Like, say, sometime back, one of the leader in known organization reached out to me, asked this.
Mm,
So I'm putting it in the form of my question. What would you advise someone who says, "I don't like this politics.
mm,
I just want my work to speak for itself. I
mm.
work, but people are pulling into and pushing, and I get affected." So, what would you advise?
See, my whole point of view is that politics is not a bad thing, right? In fact, if you're in an environment where there's no politics, you're not going to be challenged, right? The growth opportunities would kind of minimize if there is no politics. It's good. Healthy politics, I think, is good in organizations. In fact, I think there should be healthy politics. The problem is when the ulterior motive behind that politics is strays away from the purpose, right? So if you have somebody who's a leader who's purpose driven and is using power and politics to navigate through, maybe it's for faster decision making, maybe it's to bypass the red tape, it could be various reasons, right? But if you use it for the right purpose, the right intent, I think it's going to serve everybody in the right way. So I think rather than saying I don't want this politics, I'm running away from it, I think it's time we kind of embrace this politics, try and understand what it really is, right? And see, the whole mechanism behind politics is power, right? And as I said at the start of this, power is something that doesn't rest with the leader, it is given by the follower, right? All that a leader in an organization has is authority by virtue of a title or a position or a rank that they hold in the hierarchy. Whereas the actual power to influence or to persuade or to drive a favorable outcome is given by the rest of us or the followers of that leader, right? So if you are a follower, and if you're seeing that there's a leader in your organization is misusing that power, right? The power is with you. It's like a voter, right? So the vote is with you. So it is how you decide to share that power with that leader that can determine the outcomes. right? So without that power, the leader cannot play politics. So the cards are with everybody else in the team and not necessarily this one leader, right? But then if you surrender that power, like how some of our people take money and give votes, then you're actually the cause of that problem. And if you're surrendering that power to the wrong leader who's using it for the wrong reasons or is using it for the wrong political reasons to drive the wrong outcomes, then again, you're also to be blamed because you're part of the system.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have two people who have questions. We have Melvin and Kavita. Melvin and then Kavita.
Hello, Mr. Roydon. I was just listening to you. Very interesting to see your understanding. I just had one doubt regarding when you're interacting with teammates, for example. So at times you need to have an individual approach, and then so how do you
Mhm.
balance with being diplomatic and also being firm and them on the same page and trying to make them understand what you are trying to see, but they are unable to see it. So how do you balance that?
Yeah. Yeah, like I said at the start, I think creating that trust with your team members is very essential, right? The other thing is it's all about how you give the constructive feedback. So constructive feedback itself is not there's nothing wrong about it, right? We've all received constructive feedback in our work lives, in our personal lives, and we all as a leader, you're expected to provide constructive feedback to your team. It's only then that they will grow, right? And you will also grow along with them. But I think what most people get wrong is the way the feedback is delivered, right? It's not the what, right? It's the how. So I have had this experience as well. Like I have had leaders when they have to give me constructive feedback, they come into the meeting with a frown and or they come up with a very serious face and stuff. And I realized that okay, something constructive is coming back. So I actually change the mood very quickly. I actually smile, I laugh, and I said, it's okay, fine. You can tell me what it is, and I can take the feedback with a pinch of salt. So I think it's about how you give the feedback. So when I'm giving my team constructive feedback, I don't necessarily do it in a very formal way, right? You can also do it in a very informal way, until and unless the person has malicious intent and is trying to push you into a corner. Then you've got to do the formal things. Otherwise, you'll land yourself in a suit, right? So, but I've never come to that. I've never allowed it to reach that stage. So it's usually an informal way of giving constructive feedback that's worked for me. And it's when you're doing it in an informal setup, it's also easy for that person to understand, and it kind of gets quelled at the start, right? You don't allow that to fester. You don't allow the problem to fester wherein it reaches a point where you have to involve, let's say, a HR professional, or you've got to do a very formal way of feedback, right? So I've never allowed it to reach that stage. You can quell it a lot earlier through your informal feedback channels.
Thank you, Roydon sir. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
May I go ahead with my question? Yeah, thanks. Roy, this is on the heels of what Rajnikant said. How can we teach office politics? It's wordplay at the end of the day, and I'm asking you to disagree with me over here. We don't have to say politics, right? We can say strategic influence. We can say, we are teaching you how to be persuasive and so on. So, with wordplay coming into the picture, would it be good to teach people strategy, how to influence, top down, bottom up? Would this work?
I don't think you need to do that, because I think it's easier to kind of change people's perception about politics than to go the roundabout way. Because I think, see, we are all adults end of the day, okay, and we are all here for a purpose. We come together in an organization for a purpose, and if you work for a purpose-driven organization, you have your goals very clearly set out, right? And when you form a team and you come together as a team, you're there for a purpose. You have your objectives, your goals very clearly set out. So and given the environment that we are in, the growth opportunities, like even if you take the Indian ecosystem, the Indian workplace ecosystem right now, we are a growing economy. There are a lot of jobs, there are a lot of opportunities, right? So there are growth opportunities for everybody in the team to grow together, right? So there's no harm in calling it out and saying, hey, there is power play at place. At some point, there is going to be competition between peers, right? And it's okay to to maneuver your way through by using your own personal power, which could be the power of influence. It could be your professional competence. It could be many things, right? Like there are various sources of power. So it depends what you perceive as your source of power. So I think as long as the guardrails or the rules of the game are very clearly laid, and you don't cross that line and you say, okay, whatever you do to influence the decision making processes within the guardrails of the organization, or the set behaviors or the set processes, policies of the organization, I think that's fair, right? So you can call it out and say, yeah, there at some point in time there is going to be competition, but it's going to be fair competition, and here are the guardrails around which you can make your moves. It's like playing a game of chess, but here are the rules.
Fair enough. So if you don't call it politics or if you call it strategic influence, you are in a nutshell saying it is teachable.
It is teachable, but my whole question is, why do you want to call it something else when there's a clearly defined term of what it is? Like that in itself is a way of manipulation, right?
I agree with that as well, but don't you want to ease into the whole concept and get the acceptance and get it's wordplay at the end of the day.
Yes.
So if you really want to get a result,
Hmm.
even say, okay, this is how you can view it because you're presenting both sides. You're either saying
Yeah.
it's politics or it's strategic influence. It's
Hmm.
like you said, the ones with the influence are not the leaders, it's always the followers. So if the
Hmm.
followers are convinced that, I have a view, it could be politics as well as strategic influence, the outcome would be a lot easier and faster to achieve. So it's all teachable
Yeah.
in a nutshell. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Thanks.
So I was just wondering, Roy, as you were speaking about really using your power in a way which is within the, norms which make it legitimate, or, which
Hmm.
doesn't really go into the negative side of it.
Hmm.
Um, is there an impact that you see in being political, even if it is for the larger good?
Yeah. See, I think let's look at where this question is coming from, right? It's coming from bad examples, right? I'm sure when you're asking this question, Sushmita, you're thinking of a bad example, correct? So my point is, see, there's a saying which says, power tends to corrupt, right? But absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? So, I mean, it's basically in the hands of who you give that power, right? So if the power is in the hands of the wrong person, and that person is corrupted by that power and is using it for their own personal, benefit, and it's putting others at a disadvantage, then that is bad behavior, and that needs to be called out, right? So there are no excuses for bad behavior in any organization, and organizations have a policy around how to deal with such behavior, right? So what I'm trying to say here is, it's important to keep power and politics. I mean, they go hand in hand, right? But it is very important to map the two with the purpose of why these power games are being played, right? So if the purpose is seen to further a cause or a set of given goals, then I think that's fair play, right? But if individuals are using that for their own benefits or their own correct purpose, then that needs to be called out, and you need to put a stop to that. I don't think there should be tolerance for that kind of behavior, right? And I think these days organizations have that process and procedure in place. So it's very difficult for even people with authority to continue to use power adversely and corrupt the system, right? I've seen a lot of people these days are getting called out a lot faster than the past, because I think the millennials and the Gen Zs are a lot more vocal, right? They're a lot more, they show what I call as moral courage, right? They have the courage to come out and say, hey, what you may be the CEO of the company or the CXO of whatever function, but what you're doing is unfair or is biased, right? And thankfully, organizations these days have those mechanisms in place where such things can be, brought to the forefront, and they are investigated and action is taken.
Yeah, I feel like the distinction you're making is between being empowered. So power can be in two ways, right? You can be powerful, which can be
Mhm.
have a bearing on your ego and how you project yourself, or you can
Yeah.
feel empowered with what you have, and it has a different glow because it comes from within you, and you're able to hold it for other people as well, when you feel
Yes.
empowered.
Correct.
Um, yeah, and yeah, that I see that what you're saying, and yet I can't stop wondering about this whole word of politics itself. And
Mhm.
like I fully agree with you that calling it something else might not be useful, because then you're again covering it up with because the discomfort that you have, and yet that word is so widely accepted as a word which has such a negative connotation. I mean, I'm
Exactly.
probably meeting you. You're probably the only person I've met who says that it is not a bad thing, right? I mean, there may be other people as well. I mean, but and who's able to talk about it in a way which doesn't feel like it's negative. But most people who say politics is not a bad thing would say it in a way which is more about misusing power than feeling empowered, right?
Correct.
And I feel like when all of us understand it in a certain way at a larger level, I'm wondering if normalizing that, how long it would take, and without normalizing, if we keep saying that if politics is, can be used for the good, um, how are people going to relate with it, and if at all it might have an impact? And I think it is a change that will probably take a long time to come. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just wondering about, yeah.
But Pushmita, I think a large impact that's going to, really change the way organizational structures are currently designed is going to be AI, right? And and this is a conversation I've been having with a lot of colleagues in the industry, wherein we are trying to gauge the impact of AI on power and politics in organizations. Okay, because with the advent of AI and AI helping with some of the decision making, some of the bias in the system is going to get eliminated automatically, right? And because of that, some of the power that individuals in authority have may be taken away, right, by data driven decision making, or the AI bots giving you a lot more logical reasoning for your decision making, right? Because end of the day, the outcome of the power and politics culminates in a decision that's either favorable or not for a given set of individuals, or for a purpose, correct? Now when you have decisions that are backed by solid data, rational data and facts, right, that the whole influence of power in an organization and the ability to use power for these political maneuvers in an organization is going to get challenged, right? So I think over a period of time we will see these power dynamics in organizations, and even the politics within organizations change for the better or the worse. We don't know, but it'll be interesting to see with AI coming in to the workforce, right? I think AI is going to be part of the workforce, not not just augment the workforce, especially with agents, AI agents now being produced. I think there are over 1 billion AI agents already. So I think that's going to be interesting. Will AI play power and politics with human beings? I think it's an interesting hypothesis to test in the future.
You say it is interesting. I already am like alarm is going inside my head with that question. Well, I
Yeah,
see
because see,
sorry, go
some
ahead.
of these AI models are basically trained on data that is generated by human beings, right? So if there was power and politics behind some of the decision making that we have made in the past, and these AI models have been trained on those decisions, it's quite possible that just like how bias is there in some of the AI programs, power and politics could be a part of AI decision making as well, right? So that's an interesting lens. It needs to be studied a lot thoroughly, but just a thought that I thought I'll share.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I see Santosh is here and he's opened his mic and I'm sure he has a question and I'm glad to see him. Santosh, you do have something to say. You have to.
I have, if I was listening for more. Now, I I just could only get in now. I was not there. Yes. I didn't even know the connection, what PDX. Only I heard about what AI could do from a power and politics perspective. So no questions.
But then what is your thought on what Roydon just shared about AI playing a part in power and politics within organizations? Do you have any insights on that?
My bigger question has been that I strongly believe in the power of AI. Maybe first time when we heard is when the chat GPT came, it can create some text. Now we know with the deep research, it can come up in 15 minutes, a deeply researched paper, which is. And everybody predict that in the entire processes in organization, each agent will do, and you just have to just oversee. And in near future, they are expecting some 30% advantage in terms of economic. Now, I'm just wondering, so what are we going to do? Are we all going to sit in a beach and drink pina colada and chill and use this money to save other people who don't have it? Or what's going to happen? I have no clue. I'm the last guy. No. Where would it go? Is that because
Being
when
at a beach and
technology
having
came,
pina colada is a beautiful thought, though.
when technology came, we were made to believe that we will have more time.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that day. I don't mind a good pina colada on the beach.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Great. So before we close quickly, Roy, I know it's past time, but we have a few 2-3 rapid fire questions for you. If
Yeah,
you're okay
sure.
with that. Yeah?
Yeah, that's
Okay, great. All right. So if career, money, fame, or I'm assuming all of these are, but they may not be, but if none of these were constraints, what would you be doing today?
I would just be playing cricket on the road, on the streets.
Not having pina colada on a beach.
No. I always wanted to be a cricketer, and I think I know I can't play professional cricket. I'm not that good. But yeah, for the love of the game, I'd just be playing cricket on the gullies.
Lovely. What is the one thing that you think no leader should do?
I think it's important for all leaders to stand for their team and stand by their team because, like I said, going by my earlier definition of a leader is somebody who has followers. So never let your followers down.
What is one or two things in your life that really grounds you? What
I
are
think my upbringing and I think just the values the moral values that I've learned from my parents, from my family. I think that's what keeps me grounded.
And who's one person that you look up to, or who's a role model, or who's somebody you value a lot in your life?
I think human beings are too unpredictable. So I don't, look at one role model. I try to take the best from everybody.
But if somebody put a gun on your head and said one person you have to pick, who would you pick? I'm just pushing you.
One person, Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw.
What's the one thing that you want all of us to remember as we step out of this room?
Politics is not a bad thing.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much, Roy. Thanks for your time. Thanks for being here. It was such a heavy topic, and yet you made it so light and enjoyable. Thank you so much for giving us something to think about, a different take on politics and how we can change our perspective on it. Really appreciated this time that you spent with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sushmita. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, everyone, for being here. I hope all of you had fun as well.